When I was a very junior member, I worked with Ronald Reagan, and we developed a program that Jack Kemp took the lead on. And the Democrats controlled the House, the Republicans controlled the Senate, and the presidency was held by the Republicans. We had to find a way to bring the American people together so that they would say this was the right thing to do. And this, tomorrow, is the 30th anniversary of Ronald Reagan signing the 3-year tax cut that launched the recovery that enabled us to create jobs for year after year. Half the Democrats in the House voted for welfare reform because the people of the United States had concluded that giving people money for doing nothing was destructive, and so there was a genuine bipartisan coalition when we passed a balanced budget, which could, people say to me, well, Bill Clinton takes credit. Well, he was president. He certainly gets at least half the credit, because if he hadn't signed the bills, we couldn't have done it. And so you had to find a way to work with each other, even when you were at times having arguments. So I want to start with the idea, what if we took seriously the current problems of the United States? And what if we decided that we, the American people, were going to insist that politicians in Washington learn to work with each other? Now I'm going to bring 3 specific proposals to you today. This isn't about what I do in 2013 if I were president. We have problems we need to solve this summer, and we need leadership that is willing to work to solve it this summer. Right. And I think that's why it's so important to work now to do things this summer. So I'm going to give you 3 proposals. They are predicated on you convincing the members of Congress to come back to Washington, cut off their vacation, and decide that this is a serious enough situation that we ought to start over. But notice what I just said. If all they're going to do is come back on both sides to fight each other, they ought to stay home. Because it doesn't do the country any good to have people come back just to fight. But if they would be prepared to say this is a serious enough crisis, we're going to start over. We're going to erase the board, and I would include in this the Gang of 12, which I'll talk about in a second, which I think is a disastrously bad idea.
Yes.
So let me talk to you about savings, and have as your goal preempting the Committee of 12 by finding enough savings before Thanksgiving that you don't need them. And then you can have intelligent savings. Let me give you one example that may surprise you. I am against an arbitrary $500 billion cut in defense. I think it's a stupid idea. I think you ought to have the level of national security you have to defeat the enemies that threaten you. But I helped found the Military Reform Caucus in 1981 because while I'm a hawk, I'm a cheap hawk. And I believe if you applied Lean Six Sigma across the board to the State Department, the Intelligence Community, the Defense Department, you would save an immense amount of money, but you would save it intelligently by taking out waste rather than cutting out entire programs because you can't figure out how to manage. It's a fund you belong to, I don't care what your ideology is. We are teetering on the edge of an economic disaster. You look what's happening in Europe. You look at the riots in Great Britain. You look at the collapse of Greece. You look at where the Italian currency bonds are today, and you look where the French bonds are today, which is about where the Italians were in July. You look at the bubble in China, which is going to eventually break, and they're going to have the same economic malaise that other people have. And you look around and say to yourself, how comfortable am I that the current policies are going to avoid the depression getting even worse? I'll tell you, as a historian, I'm not comfortable at all. When you bounce along at 9% unemployment, you have a grave risk you can slide down rather than grow up. Because there's no drive in the system right now. So my third challenge to Congress, we come back Monday. This is much harder to do because of ideology. Well, let's start with a couple of things. 6 Democratic senators have sent a letter, or are in the process of sending a letter to the president, asking that their states be allowed to drill offshore. So you could put together a bipartisan majority in favor of liberating American companies on American soil to produce American energy in order to be in a position you don't have to spend $400 billion a year overseas. Second example, I got some heat from some conservatives because I favor ethanol. Well, let me give you a case study. I voted for gasohol Those of you who are younger will not realize this, but gasohol was the original term in 1984. Ronald Reagan signed it. I voted for his extension in 1986. Ronald Reagan signed it because we had a simple rule. If our choice was Iowa or Iran, we liked having money in Iowa. If our choice was South Dakota or Saudi Arabia, we liked having money in South